Namaste, friends. In today's module, we'll talk about theories of personality. By the end of this session, you will be able to identify 6 broad frameworks used to study personality, understand personality. You will be able to explain concepts of Freud's, Maslow's, and Cutter's theories of personality. Apply each theory to understand a case example. Critically evaluate each theory using empirical critiques, and recognize the strengths and limitations of different approaches to personality. The major frameworks to understand personality include psychoanalytic, humanistic, trait, social cognitive, behavioristic, and biological. The trait perspective of personality says that personality is made up of stable traits that describe how people typically think, feel, and act. These traits differ between individuals and stay fairly consistent across time and situations. The big 5 traits of personality, one of the major trait theories of personality, says that there are 5 basic traits that define an individual's personality. The other perspective to personality is the biological perspective, which says that personality is strongly influenced by genes, brain structure, and hormones. Traits like emotional reactivity or sociability may be inherited and can be observed early in life. Twin studies often support this perspective by showing strong genetic links to personality. The psychodynamic perspective draws from the theory of Freud's psychoanalysis, which basically says that personality is shaped by unconscious desires and early childhood experiences. Internal conflicts between our instincts, morals, and reality create different personality patterns. Later theorists, taking the psychodynamic perspective, added ideas like identity development and social influences in personality. The humanistic perspective focuses on personal growth, self-awareness, and the need to become our best selves. It sees people as inherently good and motivated by goals like meaning and purpose. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow believe personality changes with supportive environments and self-reflection. The behavioristic perspective sees personality as a collection of learned behaviors. It focuses on how rewards and punishments shape our actions over time. Internal thoughts and feelings are considered less important than observable behavior. B.F. Skinner was a key figure taking the behavioristic perspective to personality. The social cognitive perspective combines ideas from behaviorism and cognitive psychology. It says personality is shaped by learning, thinking, and social interactions. People learn behaviors by observing others and develop beliefs about themselves that guide future behavior. Bandura's concept of self-efficacy is central here in understanding the social cognitive perspective to personality. Now, let us deep dive into the psychodynamic perspective, particularly Freud's psychoanalytic theory. If you look at Freud's psychoanalytic theory, he believed that personality is made up of 3 parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. These parts are constantly interacting and often in conflict. He also proposed that the mind operates on 3 levels: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, with much of the behavior being influenced by unconscious motives and desires. So, according to Freud's psychoanalytic theory, personality is shaped majorly by the unconscious factors. If you look at the diagram of the psyche, you would find that it is equated with an iceberg wherein the conscious mind is reflected by the tip of the iceberg, which is above the surface of water. The conscious mind comprises of all the sensations and experiences of which we are aware of at any given moment. Thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and memories are in consciousness and they are regulated by external cues. The conscious represents a very small and limited aspect of personality. Right above the unconscious and right below the conscious lies the preconscious mind. It comprises of available memories, all experiences that are not conscious at a particular moment, but which can readily be recalled upon into awareness either spontaneously or with minimum effort. The preconscious bridges and safeguards the unconscious and the conscious. The third part of the psyche, which is the part of the iceberg which is below the water, is the unconscious. The unconscious comprises of all the repressed memories, motives, desires that have been pushed into the unconscious or that are a part of the unconscious, and they have a very significant influence on the individual's personality. One of the reasons that Freud's theory is called a deterministic theory of personality is because Freud very strongly believed that the unconscious plays a very significant role in shaping the personality of the individual. According to Freud, personality develops through 5 psychosexual stages: oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital, each focused on a different source of pleasure in the body. Problems during any stage can lead to a lasting personality traits or difficulties. To cope with internal conflicts, the ego uses defense mechanisms like repression, denial, projection, etc. to protect the mind from anxiety. Freud saw unconscious motivation, particularly around themes of sex and aggression, as a key driver of behavior. Finally, his theory emphasizes that early childhood experiences play a major role in shaping who we become. Now, let us look at the 3 components of personality according to Freud. The first is the id, which is present in all of us from birth. It is the seat of instincts, primarily sexual and aggressive. Includes all desires which need immediate satisfaction. It is the unconscious part of the mind, primitive part of the personality. It operates on the pleasure principle, which means that it seeks immediate gratification, satisfies itself by a primary process, which is basically a process of fantasy and imagination. Examples could include infants who are not satisfied with food will cry until they are pacified or have their needs met. Ego is the second component, which is the conscious part of the mind. This develops from the id and controls or manages its impulses in a socially acceptable manner. Developed at around the age of 1 year, it is the rational part of the personality because it decides what action to take, when to defer the gratification. It functions according to the reality principle, taking care of a need as soon as an appropriate object is found or as soon as the conditions allow for the need to be satisfied. It is aware of reality. It relates the organism to reality by means of its consciousness. It searches for objects to satisfy the wishes that it creates, represent the organism's needs, and it is called the secondary process. It keeps track of the rewards and punishments handed out by parents. It acts as a balance between the id and the third component of personality that we would just discuss, that is the superego. The superego works on the basis of moral standards or morality principle. It is unconscious, preconscious, and conscious part of the mind that acts as a conscience, guiding us in right and wrong doings. It is basically the socially acquired control mechanism or ideas usually imparted by parents and societal conditioning which have been internalized. Superego has 2 aspects. One is the conscience, which is an internalization of punishments and warnings, what not to do, which leads to the moral emotions of guilt and shame, which is basically when you are acting contrary to the moral standards the society upholds. The second component of the superego is the ego ideal, which derives from rewards and positive models presented to the child, that is, what to do. It is associated with the emotions of pride. When the individual is unable to meet superego standard for perfection, it could lead to feelings of inferiority. Superego strives for perfection by reducing its impulses and directing ego to behave in an idealistic manner. According to Freud, that these 3 components of personality, the id, ego, and superego, are not separate identities in us, but intertwined connections that influence our personalities. So id says, I want that right now because it values immediate gratification. The superego says good people don't think about those things because the superego is the morality principle that in our personality. The ego says that let's figure out a way to work together. So as you can see, ego, which is the rational part of the personality, which is in touch with reality, which is conscious, is experiencing pressure of immediate gratification from the id and is also experiencing pressure from the conditions that are moral conditions or ethical conditions that are being superimposed by the superego. While the ego is the conscious self created by the dynamic tensions and interactions between the id and the superego, which has the task of reconciling their conflicting demands with the requirements of the external reality. And that is why ego operates according to the principle of reality. So if you can see in the diagram, on the one side is the id and the impulsive behavior. On the other side is the superego and the idealistic behavior, and the task of the ego is to balance the two. The ego attempts to balance the desires of the id and the reality of the external world, experiences anxiety, and to prevent conflicts from becoming too acute and to ward off anxiety, it develops certain defense mechanisms. There are multiple defense mechanisms according to Freud. Some of them include projection, repression, sublimation, fixation, etc. Now in this picture, what you can see is how the relationship between id, ego and superego lead to three different hypothetical persons. In one case, as you can see, the id is the largest part amongst the three, and therefore it is a pleasure-seeking person dominated by the id. In the second one, the superego is the larger component, and thus it is the picture of a guilt-ridden or inferior feeling person dominated by the superego. The third one is a psychologically healthy person dominated by the ego who is able to rein in the demands of the id and the pressures of the superego. Now, if you have to look at Dhairya through Freud's lens, Freud could interpret Dhairya's shyness as a possible result of unconscious conflict. Id might desire contemplative time, superego imposes anxiety, inducing social norms, being a good girl and a good daughter. Ego uses defense mechanisms like withdrawal or reaction formation to act extroverted to manage social situations. There has been a lot of criticisms of Freud's theory, and some of them include that its concepts lack empirical testability because it is hard to operationally define concepts like unconscious or defense mechanisms, etc. It is overly deterministic, suggesting that early childhood experiences and unconscious drive completely shape the personality, leaving little room for change or agency later in life. It has a pathologizing view of human nature, and it views normal behavior through a lens of neurosis or unresolved conflict, making even healthy introversion appear as a symptom of repression. The next theory is from the humanistic lens, which is Maslow's humanistic theory. Now, if you look at Maslow's humanistic theory, he believed that personality is shaped by our drive to meet needs and reach our full potential. As all humanistic theories, Maslow also believed that people are inherently good and focused on growth. It is a very optimistic theory, unlike Freud's psychoanalytic theory, which takes a very pessimistic view of human nature. Maslow studied personality by looking at people's experiences and their idea to use free will to be the best version of themselves, which means that individuals are not just determined by the unconscious forces, but they also can exercise their free will and choice to make themselves into the kind of person they want to be. Maslow saw self-actualization as the most important part of personality. Self-actualized people are creative, authentic, purpose-driven, and deeply connected to life. We will look into the characteristics of self-actualized people a little later. But his theory of personality is mostly a theory that takes motivations into consideration. Maslow studied real people like Einstein or Eleanor Roosevelt to understand what makes people psychologically healthy. If you look at the diagram, you would find that Maslow has given this pyramid of needs. In this particular model, there are some basic needs that are based in deficiency, and there are some needs that are based in growth. If you look at the physiological needs, these are fundamental biological requirements for survival. For example, air, water, food, shelter, housing, protection from exposure, clothing, sleep, reproduction, all these comprise the physiological need of the individual. Next is the safety need, which is basically security and predictability in one's environment. It basically represents the need for personal security in terms of no crime, no violence, no war, health and well-being, stable environment, financial security, safety nets. The third need in the hierarchy are love and belongingness needs, which is the need for social connection and acceptance. Family, friendship, community, romantic relationships, group memberships, affection and intimacy needs all come under this love and belongingness needs. The next level of need is the esteem needs, which is basically the need for recognition, for competence and for respect. Self-respect, confidence, respect from others, reputation, recognition and achievement come under the esteem needs of the individual. The last set of needs, which are the highest set of need in the hierarchy, is the self-actualization need, which is realizing one's full potential. It is characterized by creativity, personal growth, moral development, pursuit of meaning, purpose, purpose-driven action, peak experiences of joy, transcendence, insight. So when we look at this particular theory, we would realize that this is a very growth-oriented approach towards personality and focuses on personal development or personality development and not just resolving inner conflicts or reacting to the environment. It looks at humans as inherently good who strive to grow, create and connect. Self-actualization is central to this particular theory of personality. Becoming one's true self, actualizing one's true potential is the peak of psychological health and a key marker of personality. Motivation drives personality. So this theory is completely around the concept of how motives and motivation influence development of personality. Uniqueness of the individual is also emphasized, as each person's path to fulfillment is personal, making every individual's personality distinct in nature. Maslow studied self-actualized individuals and he came up with the characteristics of self-actualizing individuals, which includes realistic and accurate perception of reality. So they are not biased in their appraisal of reality. They accept self, they accept others, they accept the world, they accept all the imperfections with wit, with tolerance, with humor. There is spontaneity and authenticity in them. They have independent judgment and thought, so they are not influenced by authority or social pressure. They are problem-centered individual. They have a sense of purpose and direction. They have a continuous appreciation and wonder for life's simple and profound moments. These individuals have peak experiences, which are basically moments of euphoria experienced by them, which is characterized by intense joy, wonder, and a heightened sense of connection to life. They value privacy and autonomy. They prefer to be alone. They have humility despite significant accomplishments. They are open-minded. They have creativity and creative ways to express themselves and approach problems. There is a sense of adventure and novelty and curiosity in them to embrace change. They have strong moral and ethical decision-making. And last but not the least, they are empathetic, compassionate, and service-oriented. Now, Maslow later on, in 1970, expanded his theory to include 3 additional needs, which include cognitive needs, which is the human need for knowledge, understanding, and curiosity. Aesthetic needs, that is the need for appreciation of beauty, balance, and form. And transcendence needs, which he placed above the self-actualization needs, which represents the spiritual aspect of human aspiration. This level represents the desire to connect with something beyond oneself, such as religious faith, service to others, or a sense of purpose that is greater than oneself. The expanded hierarchy now includes physiological needs, then the safety needs, the love and belongingness needs, esteem needs, cognitive needs, aesthetic needs, self-actualization needs, and self-transcendence needs. Now, if we look at Dhairya through Maslow's lens, Dhairya, who is an introverted person, Maslow would view Dhairya's family as being unable to satisfy her belongingness needs. As Dhairya continues to express herself and engage in ways she chooses, it would also note that her agency to act and motivation to move towards a more fulfilled and actualized state. As her needs are met, she would gradually move toward cementing, accruing self-esteem, and ultimately self-actualization, accepting herself and expressing her personality more openly. Maslow's theory has also been criticized. No theory is devoid of any criticism. So, Maslow looked initially at these needs as hierarchical in nature, meaning that the lower order needs have to be satisfied before one can move on to the higher order needs. However, later on, he revised it to say that they are not very strictly sequential. So, in real life, people often pursue self-actualization even when basic needs are not fully met. It also has limited empirical support, and there has been inconsistencies in research evidences. The theory reflects more individualistic Western ideals of growth because self-actualization is more Western, a concept, and self-realization is more Eastern, a concept, which was not touched initially by Maslow in his theory. The third set of theory that we would today talk about are the trait theories, particularly Catel's trait theory. So Raymond B. Cattell used empirical research and statistical analysis to understand personality. Now, the previous two theories that we talked about, Freud's theory was based on his own experiences with patients, his patients in psychotherapy or psychoanalysis. Maslow studied people who were highly functioning and who were self-actualizers. When we look at Catel's trait theory, it is based in scientific methods of empirical research. He believed that personality is best understood by identifying and measuring traits which are stable patterns of behavior, thoughts and emotions that make people consistent yet uniquely different. Trait theories in a way emphasize a surface-oriented approach to personality, the reason being that when we look at Freud's theory, he delved deeper into the unconscious or the psyche of the individual and is known as the depth psychology. Whereas when we look at trait theories, personality is seen as an expression of a set of traits. They describe the conscious and concrete aspects of personality in straightforward terms. For example, friendliness, ambitiousness, extroversion, while de-emphasizing the unconscious and abstract explanations of human behavior. They are based on empirical research rather than just clinical observation. To Cattell, personality enables to predict what a person will do in a given situation. So, personality has a great predictive power. Now, when we say empirical and data-driven, Cattell made use of factor analysis as the method to identify the group of related traits, reducing a vast list of traits that were used to understand human personality to more manageable number. He identified 16 source traits, the key foundational traits that define an individual's personality structure. So, source traits and surface traits were the two type of traits that Cattell talk about. Source traits are underlying fundamental dimensions of personality that are derived purely from factor analytic studies and are stable and consistent across situations, whereas surface traits are observable behaviors that are influenced by the interaction of source traits and the environmental factors. Cattell's theory talks about continuum-based measurement because traits were measured on a scale and not fixed category. They also came up with certain trait profiles or patterns of traits across multiple traits to understand the person holistically. The theory also recognizes both genetic and environmental influences on personality traits, and trait profiles have great predictive power as they predict future behaviors, preferences, and interpersonal styles of individuals. So, Catel's major contribution has been the identification of the 16 personality factors or the 16 source traits through extensive statistical analysis, particularly factor analysis. In these 16 source traits, 15 were temperament source traits and 1 was ability source trait of intelligence or intellect. So, it provided a comprehensive profile of an individual. The 16 source traits have been listed here, comprising of warmth, emotional stability, aggressiveness, liveliness, sensitivity, independence, perfectionism, tension, etc. This is a typical profile of an individual on the 16 personality factor questionnaire, the assessment tool that was given by Cattell based on the 16 personality factors. Now, if you look at Dhairya through Cattell's lens, he would assess Dhairya using 16 personality factor inventory. She might score low on warmth and social boldness, suggesting quietness or reserve. At the same time, she would score high on sensitivity, indicating rich internal processing and emotional awareness. These traits would be seen as relatively stable and influenced by both genetic and environmental inputs. Now, Cattell's theory has been criticized for overlapping categories because there are high intercorrelations that exist between the traits. It is culturally narrow because it was developed using Western samples, so it may not fully account for traits emphasized in other cultures. Some researchers also argue that 16 personality factor lacks consistency across studies and may not always produce very stable results. So, it has certain validity and reliability issues. Nonetheless, Cattell's 16 personality factor questionnaire has been widely used to assess personality and it has good predictive validity. The last theory that I wanted to talk about today is the Big Five personality theory, which again is a trait theory of personality, and it is most widely used theory of personality as well as personality assessment in today's times. So, while researchers and psychologists have put forward many personality taxonomies, the Big Five personality trait model remains the most widely cited and well researched. The Big Five personality trait multi-trait models is widely recognized as able to explain individual differences across the human species. 5 traits consistently emerge from factor analytic research as the most important ones, which include introversion, extroversion, neuroticism, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness. So, these 5 elements are often captured by the mnemonic OCEAN. O for openness to experience, C for conscientiousness, E for extraversion, A for agreeableness, and N for neuroticism. Now, I would like to provide summary for today's module. So, today we talked about that how personality can be understood through multiple lenses: biological traits, humanistic, psychoanalytic, behavioristic, and cognitive frameworks. We discussed in detail about Freud's theory of personality, which is basically characterized by the unconscious conflicts between the id, ego, and the superego. The Maslow theory, which frames personality as a growth journey towards self-actualization, and Cattell's theory, which uses data-driven trait analysis to understand any person's personality. Thank you so much.